Oh, yes, Tuesday edition of Schein Time. We have so much to do today. So the Yankees and Dodgers aren't going 162-0. No worries. But baseball does have something to worry about when it comes to its home plate umpires. Is an Odell Beckham Jr. Giants reunion on the horizon? I have a strong take. And Aaron Glenn says Geno Smith is going to take the Jets to the promised land. Wait, what? Schein Time starts right now.
Don't stop. Keep it coming, baby. Don't stop.
Thanks for asking, though. Yeah. I'm good. I let my game do the talking.
That's right, SGA. We're going to let our game do the talking on Schein Time, too. We'll get into what prompted SGA to say that coming up here on Schein Time. But first, to baseball. And listen, if you're a Yankees fan, and I am, obviously, if you're a fan of the Yankees, you don't like seeing a late night, staying up to the wee hours of the morning, Cal Raleigh walk-off for the Seattle Mariners. And listen, it's coffee and walk-offs. That's what Seattle does. The big jumper, getting it done late. Look, this is one of those games where, honestly, if you're a Yankee fan like me, you tip the cap to the opposition. Cal Raleigh started slow. Obviously, Cal Raleigh struggled mightily, didn't have a hit in the WBC, and it's the first loss for the Yankees on the season. And I hate losing to Seattle because these are the games that I like to refer to as the wheel stop spinning kind of games and series where, you know, you don't bat an eye if this turns out to be Yankees, Mariners in the ALCS, right? So you want to bounce back tonight. You want to win the series. Those are the things that matter when it's all said and done. Years ago, I destroyed Brian Cashman for not trading for Luis Castillo. I wanted him with the Yankees in the worst possible way. They didn't want to give up prospects. That drove me nuts. And Castillo always sticks it to the Yankees. He was magnificent last night. 6 innings pitched, and he had 7 strikeouts, scattered a couple hits. He was awesome. Look, one of those nights, though, or if you're a Yankees fan, even though I don't like the fact that you had Blackburn pitching for the Yankees in that 9th inning, he's like the human white flag. Anytime he's in the game, you're sitting there and you're saying, all right, it's over. I could just walk off because, you know, Seattle's going to walk off too. Look, I tipped the cap to Seattle. Castillo was great. Let me tell you what I liked. I liked what I saw from Ryan Weathers. I obviously wanted more on the Yankees in the offseason. I wanted them to do some things that would bolster the team more. I thought Weathers, his dad David used to pitch for the Yankees, one of my favorite relief pitchers. This was a terrific move, and you could see it. Even when he was a little wild early, struck out a couple guys in the first, had 7 strikeouts and 4+. You want him to certainly go deeper into games and be, you know, a little bit more calculated in terms of throwing strikes. But for a first Yankee performance, I could do nothing but stress the positive here on young Ryan Weathers, who has always had the talent. The Yankees are banking on Blake and Boone to put it together. And I thought that was really good stuff from Weathers on the bump last night. Yeah, listen, give Big Dumper credit. I don't want to see Blackburn ever again pitching for the Yankees. I'm only exaggerating by a little. But the big story from the game last night, look, the Yankees are on fire when it comes to the ABS challenges. 5 for 5 on Monday night. Here's Aaron Boone after the game.
Really good job by the guys. You know, when you have that kind of success rate, it's not going to be like that every night. But I thought everyone was obviously warranted, and a couple in some key spots to give us a chance to build an inning. We just weren't able to build much offensively tonight. You also get a little frustrated over there, like let's, you know, you don't want to. Those are razor thin pitches sometimes. You don't want to always have to be challenging, but. You know, good on the guys for just hammering the strike zone right now.
Listen, I give Aaron Boone and the Yankees a lot of credit for the fact that they were perfect last night, 5 of 5. And by the way, on the season, Yankees are 10 for 11 when it comes to the ABS and the challenges. And this up last night, calling the low strike consistently when it was clearly below the knees. So why do you keep doing it? And this is where, when it's all said and done, it's a bad look for baseball. The umpire union has, had this stranglehold on baseball forever. I mean, Angel Hernandez, he would have been thrown out of society, let alone baseball, if we had ABS when he was around. I mean, did you see CB Buckner over the weekend? I mean, CB, more like can't believe it when he's behind the plate. Laz Diaz, I mean, this is amateur hour. I mean, look at this. I mean, that's... And this guy's the worst. And this is a problem. It's a good thing that it's there for baseball, but these guys aren't close. And the ABS is confirming everything that I've said forever when it comes to baseball with the umpire problem. And no BS, the ABS system is working, right? And I give Rob Manfred credit. I wish we didn't have to do it. By the way, I wish in theory you still had the ability for catchers to frame pitches. And, I wish that, Greg Maddux always paint the black. Like now it's literally the letter of the law. And that's cool, right? I mean, you want to be able to get it right. But we are exposing now the umpires. And that's not good. I mean, this is kind of self-explanatory, right? And this shouldn't be film at 11 here in terms of the strike zone and what's a strike and when to call a strike and how to call a strike and everything that goes into that equation. But if anything, these umpires who have been Teflon fat cats for a long time, they're getting exposed. This should have been in Major League Baseball a long time ago. So I was curious to see how it was going to work. By the way, it's instant, and I do think that's great. It's not slowing down the game, which I like. Now, there will be a strategy in terms of, obviously, we start getting into more meaningful games and down the stretch of seasons and, pennant chases and dog days and then October baseball, when to challenge, because there's certain batters you're going to trust and catchers you trust and pitchers you trust and everything that goes into that equation. But I think when it's all said and done, this has been much better than I ever expected for baseball. Much better than I expected. Remember, we talked to Joe Davis, the voice of baseball on Fox, about this. I was concerned. I was a little skeptical. I was curious more than anything else. So far, it has been terrific and tremendous for baseball for getting it right. But these umpires, man, you knew it was bad. It's even worse than you could have ever imagined. So this just in, major breaking news. The Dodgers are not going 162-0. And that counts as something, right? So here it is. The Dodgers lose their first game of the year, and I can do nothing but stress the positive. My worry level on the Dodgers is 0. You see Sasaki right there, and Roki Sasaki during spring training. And honestly, at the end of the day, I don't give a damn about spring training, and it means nothing. And, I was a little concerned that his ERA was a sickly, a robust, a fat 15 plus, close to 16. Now, the fact that Sasaki was able to be solid and have a solid outing, a decent outing, only gave up a couple runs for the Dodgers last night, you can take a breath, I think. I actually, on a night where the Dodgers lose their first game of the season, I'm more convinced than ever they're winning 120. I'm more convinced than ever that they're going to be just fine. Because the Dodgers, when it's all said and done, if they have Sasaki pitching like he did last night, as opposed to what we saw in spring training, just alleviates another worry, and which is obviously, very minuscule when it comes to the list of worries for the LA Dodgers. So even in a loss for LA, they find a way for people like me to ultimately say everything's going to come up again rosy to the tune of a historic regular season and another World Series for the LA Dodgers. To the NFL now, and new Giants head coach John Harbaugh didn't exactly close the door on an OBJ return to Big Blue when asked at the owners' meetings on Monday. Take a listen.
Obvious pat answer would be you look at every option, right? And if Odell's an option, then we'll be looking at it for sure. And he and I do talk and we do text, and we've maintained a really great relationship. He's one of my very favorite people in the world. So it's not like you don't talk to guys about things like that. And certainly we have. We'll just have to see where it all goes. What's best for him, what's best for the Giants. That's the number one thing. It is what's best for our team. And any player, if he helps you be a better team and can make you better, then you're going to pursue that. So we'll just have to see where that goes.
How much time do I have? So I love John Harbaugh. Absolutely love him. And he has done everything right at every single turn when you look at the offseason for the New York Football Giants. And John Harbaugh has been around the block. Obviously, he's built a Hall of Fame career in Baltimore. Obviously, he's very politically savvy. In Baltimore, they had the best public relations department in the entire National Football League. It would have been a bigger deal and a bigger headline if John Harbaugh would have just slammed the door shut on a Odell Beckham Jr. Giants reunion. So let me be crystal clear here. Odell coming back to the Giants is one of the dumbest concepts I've ever heard. Under no circumstance can Odell Beckham Jr. be a Giant ever again. Look, if we're showing photos that include Ben McAdoo and Eli Manning, what are we doing here, okay? Odell Beckham Jr. is a thing of the past. And I get it, right? You know, Giants fans have this really sick and twisted love affair when it comes to Odell and the most single overrated play in the history of the NFL, the one-handed catch, which happened to be on Sunday Night Football and happened to have Chris Collinsworth. Oh, here's a guy. I mean, he almost fell out of the booth. I mean, LeBron was tweeting up a storm. There were like 5 or 6 catches this year in the NFL that were better than Odell's catch. I mean, we could talk about T. Higgins and the one-handed catch. We could talk about Puka Nacua and his catch. We could talk about Brock Bowers and his catch. We could talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's just off the top of my head this season. Odell Beckham Jr., Giants fans are obsessed. And if that game wasn't on Sunday Night Football back in the day, which was a loss, by the way, in that one-handed grab, if it was, the 3-team on Fox at 1 o'clock, nobody would be talking about that catch. Nobody. Last 2 years, Odell Beckham Jr. has played 9 games. 9 games, suspended last year for violating the substance abuse policy. So unless he's coming back to film a commercial with Eli or coming back for Old Timers Day, I don't want to hear about Odell Beckham Jr. coming back to the Giants. Not to mention, and Harbaugh referenced that he had him in Baltimore, and I will always and forever believe the only reason they signed him, and I got it at the time, was because it was a favor to Lamar Jackson, who wanted him. Remember Lamar and his contract situation? That year, you saw Odell in Baltimore, 14 games, 35 catches, 565 yards. So John Harbaugh might love the guy, but he was a bit player. Not to mention the fact the Giants smartly just signed Calvin Austin, and I love that move. Just signed Darnell Mooney, and I love that move. So what are you going to do? Have Odell Beckham Jr. as your 5th receiver with all the conversation and scrutiny around him? And please, for the love, don't tell me that it's a positive that he has a relationship with Malik Neighbors. That is a hard pass. I mean, Malik Neighbors, I need him focused. I don't need Odell Beckham Jr. going back over LSU memories and, start talking about boat trips back in the day. That's not what I need for focus. Everything John Harbaugh has done has been right with the New York Football Giants. Under no circumstance should Odell Beckham Jr. be back with Big Blue. Meanwhile, how about the Jets? Wait until you hear what Aaron Glenn had to say about Geno Smith.
Something about a quarterback, and I'm going to say a quarterback with a chip on his shoulder. And listen, he's proven a lot in this league of what he's done, especially when you take those times when he was in Seattle. Listen, he fits exactly what we're trying to do. So obviously we've created an identity. The foundation of our offense is pretty good now. Like, I just feel like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land. He's the guy that's going to touch the ball more than anybody else.
Promised land? Wait, what promised land? What's your definition of promised land? So I am going to give Aaron Glenn a pass. Last year, Aaron Glenn was atrocious as a head coach. Did absolutely nothing right. I love the Aaron Glenn hire, and so far, I've been wrong. Like, beyond dead wrong. Now, I will say, if you get past the headline and the word choice of promised land, I appreciate what Glenn is saying. He's also leaving no wiggle room or ambiguity in terms of who's going to be under center for the Jets this year. Another reason why Ty Simpson makes 0 sense for the Jets and why they can't draft him and won't draft him in the middle of round number 1. Geno Smith was terrific, when he was playing in Seattle. And I thought last year was a mess. Offensive line, obviously organization, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly didn't get along. I'm willing to give Geno a pass. So you remember in our first ever Schein Time, we raved about this move when Brian Costello, our guy from the New York Post, broke this story that the Jets were making the trade. I don't want to hear about IK and Polly. I don't want to hear about getting punched in the face. I don't want to hear about Geno when he was with the Jets the first time around. It's a long way off. I think that Geno's going to have a really strong season for the Jets. Maybe by promised lands, Aaron Glenn means 5 wins, 6 wins, improvement, show that he could coach, keep his job. Those to me would be big positives. So I do love, take away the headline in terms of promised land, I love that Aaron Glenn is all in here on Geno. Meanwhile, how about this from a former Jet quarterback in the news today? Pat McAfee was ultimately conducting a great interview with our guy Mike McCarthy on his unbelievable show on ESPN and talked to Coach McCarthy about the potential of an Aaron Rodgers reunion in Pittsburgh.
I've talked to Aaron regularly, and we'll continue to do so, and we're just working through it, and when it's time to fully address it, we will. But it's a process that he's going through, and I'm comfortable with it. But we've had very, very positive conversations on a weekly basis.
Listen, I love Aaron Rodgers, and I don't care how that sounds. I think Aaron Rodgers is absolutely sensational. And I know he drives people nuts in terms of the timeline and the time frame. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest throwers, if not the greatest thrower of the football in the history of the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, at this stage of his career, at this age, can do whatever he wants. Not to mention, Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers have an unbelievable relationship. And they won a lot of games together and won a championship together. And Rodgers won MVPs with Mike McCarthy. I mean, what's not to love here? Not to mention, and McCarthy mentioned this to the great Pat McAfee and the boys and Darius Butler and A.J. Hawk and, the cast of thousands on Pat's outstanding show. Listen, Will Howard is a heartbeat away if for some reason Rodgers, decides to call an audible, doesn't play this year. And, McCarthy was saying that he would have drafted Will Howard much higher than the 6th round this past year. So I think that when it's all said and done, Will Howard as the heir apparent or the insurance policy makes sense. Let me give you a take here. Rodgers is going to sign with Pittsburgh, re-sign with Pittsburgh, reunite with Mike McCarthy, and he'll do it before the draft. Do it at some point this month. He'll get paid. He deserves it. For those who rip Aaron Rodgers, let's go back to Week 18, where that was a vintage performance from our guy Aaron Rodgers to win and make the playoffs and beat Lamar Jackson and go pound for pound, throw for throw. That was incredible. Before you tell me, well, what about the Houston playoff game? Who played well against that Houston defense this year? Not Drake May. Let's be crystal clear about that. Nobody played well against that defense. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers, with my guy Aaron Rodgers, with my guy Mike McCarthy, who I think is a fabulous coach, and obviously he has a street named after him in Green Bay, won a Super Bowl in Green Bay, won a lot of games in Green Bay, had 3 straight 12-win seasons with the Dallas Cowboys working for Jerry Jones. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to surprise a lot of people this year. I think Pittsburgh's the favorite in the division. I think Pittsburgh's had a remarkable offseason. And when they get Rodgers back, they're going to complete it. I think Michael Pittman Jr. is one of the best moves of the entire offseason. I think he's going to have a monster first season in Pittsburgh. I think Rico Dowdle, who played for McCarthy in Dallas, so there's a method to the madness here. I think Dowdle is going to be outstanding when you look at it for this football team. They improved the defense. And frankly, I think Mike McCarthy is a better head coach than Mike Tomlin. So I expect that you are going to see Rodgers back. I think the fact that McCarthy is talking this openly about talking to Rodgers, that tells me that, he knows what Aaron's going to do. They'll operate on his timeline. I have no issue with Aaron taking his time. He's earned it. He's a vet, knows the offense, knows the system. And I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Pittsburgh Steelers as a 12-win football team in 2026. Meanwhile, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni was asked for an update on A.J. Brown's saga.
Yeah, everything, nothing's changed there. AJ's an Eagle. Nothing's changed from the last time I spoke to you guys. And, yeah, that's where we are.
So I think that Nick Sirianni is obviously towing the company line. And Howie Roseman, who's the Eagles general manager, who I love, he, just kept repeating, A.J. Brown is an Eagle and A.J. Brown is in Philly. And, basically, if you understand that these guys are not wallflowers, I'm going to interpret this for you. A.J. Brown's done. See A.J. Brown in this uniform? You might as well feast your eyes on this now because you're never going to see it again. And I think that Eagles fans should recognize and realize that it's over. And I don't blame A.J. Brown for the A.J. Brown drama. I think that Jalen Hurts, first and foremost, is to blame. Jalen Hurts and our friend Chris Sims on his incredible Pro Football Talk Show has documented that, Jalen Hurts is, constantly ad-libbing and constantly, doing different things at the line of scrimmage and is not exactly a great leader. So I think Hurts has some things to work through, including just how awful he was at the forward pass last year and how terrible he and the Eagles were on third down. I think the offensive coordinator situation is awful. Last year, it was a complete and utter mess, and somehow it might have gone worse. I mean, their offensive coordinator for this year is Sean Mannion, who was playing in the NFL a hot second ago and he's never called plays before. Nick Sirianni is obviously more interested in mean-mugging crowds than he is ultimately, calling plays and reining guys in. And here's the deal when I have full confidence in Brown ultimately never playing again for Philly. It already worked. It's over. There's nothing left. He won the Super Bowl. A.J. Brown is entrenched. Howie Roseman made an unbelievable heist. Got everyone fired in Tennessee when he traded for A.J. Brown on draft night in a true stunner and a blockbuster a few years ago. A.J. Brown, $43.4 million if he's traded before June 1. Dead cap money. So what fascinates me with that nugget, right? I don't see any way that Brown is on Philly this year. It just doesn't track, it doesn't translate for me. I think there's one team that makes sense, and that's the New England Patriots. Like if I said to you, A.J. Brown to New England for pick 31, who says no? The answer is nobody. If you take the dead cap money out of it, it's a no-brainer for both teams. You get a first-round pick if you're Philly. You can get another receiver. You can trade up. You can trade down. Let Howie, who owns the draft, they should rename the draft the Howie Roseman Invitational. Howie does his thing. And obviously, New England needs a number one wide receiver for Drake May. They said goodbye, rightly so, to Stephon Diggs. Plus, Mike Vrabel knows everything, the good, the bad, and everything in between when it comes to A.J. Brown. Had him in Tennessee, never wanted to trade him in the first place. So that, to me, would make all the sense in the world. But then you factor in the $43.4 million in terms of the dead cap money pre-June 1. I don't see Roseman trading him post-June 1 without helping the ball club. So I think that they're going to have to get creative in a few different ways. But honestly, I would be stunned if A.J. Brown ever played again for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think at this stage, the only team that makes sense, the New England Patriots. And I do think that's where he's headed for this upcoming season. How about the latest on George Pickens and Dallas? Brian Schottenheimer addressed the Cowboys' plans for GP.
I had conversations with George. He's doing great. He and CD have been taking a lot of trips together. So when I text them now, I kind of text them both. I was at a wedding the other day. My nephew or my niece got married, and I text them both, and it was great just to catch up with those guys. But yeah, he's training with Dak. Hey, look, GP loves it. We love GP. We have plans for GP to be here for a long time. So we'll let the business side of this thing play out and see where it goes.
I think Shotty's onto something here when he says GP loves it here. See, here's the deal when it comes to George Pickens. George Pickens is a different cat. And I could say about 7 other different things in terms of how to frame it and phrase it on Pickens. He doesn't always play hard. He doesn't always care. That's what drove everybody nuts in Pittsburgh. Even the Detroit-Dallas game on the Thursday nights last year down the stretch of the season, that was a mess where he didn't give his all. Also, Pickens, by any measuring stick, was a top 4 or 5 wide receiver when you look at it in the NFL this past year. So I think that, dangling that carrot with the franchise tag for someone like Pickens is smart. I don't think he needs to be there for anything in the offseason. Doesn't matter to me. He knows the playbook. He knows Dak. He's, knows the tendencies for CeeDee Lamb. Now, if we start talking about late August and that increases the likelihood of a player getting hurt, especially at the receiver position, that could ruin a season. Remember when they signed Lamb late in August, or even last year with Washington, which was the easiest first guess in the history of first guesses when they totally fouled up the season, waiting on the contract for Terry McLaurin. Look, you got to be extra careful here. Pickens is not the kind of guy you ever want to overpay because, frankly, you put that money in the bank, I don't think you're going to get. Now, if it's on your terms, that's one thing. But if you put the money in the bank and you overpay him just to have him there, I don't think you ever get George Pickens to focus. I'm not against George Pickens on the franchise tag at all. GP loves it here. We'll find out how much. Our guest today has been a staple at NFL Films for 46 years. The executive producer, the analyst when it comes to NFL matchup. He is the co-author of The Games That Changed the Game. He is my guy, the great Greg Cosell. Greg, how are you?
Mr. Schein, what's happening? Good to be with you as always.
Listen, it is your time to shine, my friends. It is draft season. I am so excited to chop it up with you. And Greg is the best when it comes to studying film and then projecting what a player is going to be at the NFL level. So I kind of want to start at the top. I want to get your film study and your take when it comes to Fernando Mendoza. Raiders fans are fascinated. They're fired up. I think he's going to be a terrific NFL quarterback. Is there a comp you see from prior scouting, different years, NFL comparison? What do you see when you break down the film on Mendoza?
Well, it's so interesting. And again, there's so many variables, as you know, Adam. You do this, this is what you do. There's so many variables that go into whether a quarterback is a good player, great player, average player. All we can do is look at the tape that we have right now and try to project. That's what teams do. So when you watch Mendoza, and I think we've gotten away from this to a large extent in our evaluation of quarterbacks, so many people talk about quarterback traits. And what they normally mean nowadays is that a quarterback has a big arm and he can run around. We seem to have lost a little bit the sense of the quarterback that can really execute at a high level an offense. In other words, be a ball distributor, be an executor of a well-schemed offense. Because the focus so much is on the other things, the athletic elements. And I'm not suggesting those things aren't important in today's NFL, but there's always going to be a place for a quarterback that can execute a really well-schemed offense at a high level. Ultimately, that's what Mendoza has to be in the league. Now, can he get a first down running once in a while? Sure. And people remember that touchdown run. I think it was against Miami in the championship game. Sure, he can do that once in a while. But if he's to be successful in the league, it's going to be because he is a 10 from the pocket. And all you can do is see what you see on tape. And there are certain things you don't see because it wasn't part of their offense. So all you can do is raise a question. For instance, he didn't throw the ball between the numbers very often at Indiana. That was not part of their offense. Does that mean he can't do it? I don't know the answer to that. No one knows the answer to that, but he didn't do that. Did I feel at times in the pocket with his movement, he was a little robotic? Yeah, I thought that way watching his tape. Is that a fatal flaw? Not necessarily. So as I said, I like Mendoza because I like the way he plays the game. There's a timing and rhythmic feel to the way in which he plays the game, and he is a very precise ball location thrower. And that's a trait that kind of gets lost in these conversations about athleticism and big arms. So my guess is he'll be a good player. Is he Josh Allen or Mahomes? Probably not. Is he more like, when all's said and done, a Jared Goff or a Matt Ryan? Probably. And you know what? Those guys are pretty good.
So it's funny that you mentioned those two names. I think Goff is the perfect comparison. And I think he's a really good to great quarterback. And he's had borderline MVP seasons. And, he's been to the Super Bowl. They had to get rid of him in order to win the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan, to me, has a Hall of Fame case, right? So, when you reference him, and also the Matt Ryan we saw in Boston College. So if he turns out to be Goff, to me, Greg, I, A, think that's a great comparison. And B, I think that means the Raiders got themselves a heck of a quarterback in Clint Kubiak's offense.
Don't forget, he's now going to be in an offense. And granted, he didn't play under center hardly at all in college. And there's no question that playing under center and turning your back to the defense in play action, which is a significant part of Clint Kubiak's offense, as we saw in Seattle, that's a learned trait, so there's no question he will learn that. But from everything you hear, he's one of those guys that is open to being coached hard and learning, and he will learn that. And I think it's a very good offense for him because a lot of those play actions, those are really defined reads and throws. So, and that's something I think he does really well. He's a very efficient executor of a well-schemed pass game. So, I would expect him to be a good player. I'm not in the business of parsing it to, is he going to be great? Is he going to be a Hall of Famer? I don't do that.
Right.
Just like I don't make lists. I don't do that. I just love to evaluate. But I think, now again, do they need to improve their O-line? Absolutely. And I'm sure that'll be a focus of their draft. Obviously, they signed Tyler Lindenbaum, so they really feel like they have that taken care of. And Lindenbaum will be the one that calls the protections. Mendoza will not be doing that, certainly not in his rookie season.
I'm fascinated to get your take because you studied the film when it comes to Ty Simpson. Because honestly, Greg, and he's pointing at us right now. I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't view him, and I know you're not making lists, as a first-round pick. I don't think he's played enough football. I don't think he's played, frankly, enough good football. What do you see when you go under the hood on Ty Simpson?
Yeah, Simpson is interesting because what you do see when you watch the Alabama offense is you do see the kinds of route concepts and throws that are NFL throws. You saw a lot of deep digs. They ran a concept called dagger, which is an inside vertical and an outside dig. They ran that quite often, and he made those throws. He made those turkey hole shot throws versus cover two. So you saw the kinds of throws that you say, that's an NFL throw. I think that it's very hard to know with Simpson because he played extremely well early in the season. He had a phenomenal 4-game stretch. I forget which teams he beat, but he had a phenomenal 4-game stretch. And then he struggled down toward the end of the season. And I think a couple of things stand out. Number one, I think for the most part, he's a fundamentally sound quarterback. I think he throws a good ball. It's funny, you mentioned, is he a first-round pick? And I've been giving a lot of thought, and believe me, Adam, I don't have a brilliant answer for this, of what it means when we say a first-round pick. That can also be in the eye of the beholder and how someone sees a quarterback within the context of their offense. But is he a special prospect, the way we think of special, sort of the word that we all understand? Probably not. But can he execute an offense? Can he make NFL throws? Does he have mobility? Yes. But a couple of things stood out to me later in the season. Number one, I thought he became very uncomfortable at times when there were bodies around him. And he's not big. So I think that's something that you have to consider when you evaluate him. When you get to the NFL and there are bodies around you and you still got to deliver from the pocket and not fall away from throws or not hurry yourself, the term I always used is play fast. When not play fast, these are things you have to decide. There's not a large enough sample size for us to know for sure exactly what he is. But the good is good. And now, look, there's very few transcendent quarterbacks. We all get into this mode of, who's the next Josh Allen? Who's the next Patrick Mahomes? There's not 100 of those guys, Adam. You know that. So
100%.
Most guys have to fit into an offense that helps them in terms of defining reads and throws.
Let me ask it a little differently on Simpson and also other quarterbacks in this draft. When you look at Simpson, do you see a starting quarterback? How many other quarterbacks do you think in this draft, if any, would you call starting quarterbacks in the NFL?
Well, and that's a fascinating question because now you get into the whole team and scheme aspect. I think Ty Simpson can be a starting quarterback for sure, depending on the scheme that he's in. You know, I think if you put him in Kevin O'Connell's offense, if you put Ty Simpson in a sort of Kyle Shanahan type offense, and there's many of those coaches in the league now, I think he could be an efficient player. If you're asking me if he could run any offense with any coach, I'd say probably no. But I think so much of quarterback play becomes dependent upon the coaching and the scheme. And that's why it's so hard to make these definitive evaluations of these quarterbacks that so many people do now. They treat this, Adam, as if it's a mathematical equation, and it's not. There's so many variables involved. I'll give you an example. Garrett Nussmeier, okay? I watched him last summer. I watched his 2024 tape. I watched, I think, 7 or 8 games. And I came away from his 2024 tape thinking this guy could be a quality starting quarterback in the National Football League. He threw with anticipation. He had a good arm. He had more than enough movement. He was aggressive. And I think you have to be aggressive in this league. You have to have an aggressive mindset because there are situations that absolutely demand that. And you've got to be willing to turn it loose. And then you watch him this year, and I know he had a serious core oblique injury, and I could almost see watching him that he couldn't throw it the right way, and his year was, you know, to be frank, was terrible. But after watching him last summer, I thought, you know what? In the right scheme, in the right system, this guy could be a quality starting quarterback. So much is dependent on so many variables that, you know, are go beyond just talent. Like you mentioned Simpson, you have some concerns, and that's totally valid because he's not special in the way we think of special. But you put him in the right system, you know, maybe he needs a run game, a good O-line. You know, the other factor too is the whole team. You know, you don't want these quarterbacks. Look at Cam Ward last year, and I really like Cam Ward.
Sam, yeah, you know, good point.
There were a lot of games where he had to put up 30 points just to compete. You don't want a rookie quarterback to have to be in that situation.
And I'm with you on Nussmeier as well. All right, I want to get into Jeremiah Love because, Greg, I am obsessed. Like, I can't get enough of Jeremiah Love, and I interviewed him on my SiriusXM radio show at the Super Bowl, and, I mean, he was just so incredible as a human, on air, off air, his answers, the depth. I mean, I think he's kind of the perfect prospect. What do you see when you take a look at Love?
Well, I've got the same bromance with Love that you have. I really like Love. I mean, the more I watched him, the more I thought of Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, almost like a combo platter. And don't forget, last year, Bijan Robinson, 20% of his snaps, he lined up detached from the formation, and I think Love can do the same thing. So now it gets into sort of the question, the conventional wisdom question, Adam, which, you know, everybody talks about. You know, I would never take a running back in the first round. Well, you know, look, do I have an answer for that? No, and nobody really does. People like to say they do, but he's a playmaker. You know, he's a running back. You can line him up outside at wide receiver. I mean, I was at the combine when he wanted to run that last route again because he was unhappy with the rep that he had prior. I mean, this guy is a playmaker that can score from anywhere on the field. Look at what Jahmyr Gibbs has done for the Lions, what he does. Look what Bijan Robinson does. And I know there are people listening that might say, well, these teams haven't gone to the Super Bowl. You know what? Only 2 teams go to the Super Bowl. That's not the way we evaluate players. You evaluate players for what they can do for you in your offense. And to me, Love he's an explosive weapon. To me, there are 2 players on offense in this draft that are truly explosive weapons that, to me, go beyond their position. Their conventional wisdom about their position, and that's Jeremiah Love and Kenyon Sadiq. I think those 2 players go beyond the conventional thought process of their position.
I'm obsessed with Sadiq as well, so that's a great one. How about Styles and Downs? Because these are a couple of guys who, again, you know, and I've talked to NFL people about this, like, you know, I kind of roll my eyes. Oh, you can't draft the middle linebacker. You can't draft the safety. You can't draft the running back. Well, I can, and I will, and especially this year. So what do you see when you study the film on these guys?
Well, and again, now, we spoke about offense and schemes. Defense is very similar. Vic Fangio, for instance, and there's a lot of Fangio disciples. Linebacker is a critical position in a Vic Fangio defense. Think about Zach Bond. And then, I give Vic Fangio a ton of credit because Zach Bond had never played stack backer in his career. And then he comes to Philly, he puts him at stack backer, and he's an all-pro type player. But in a Vic Fangio defense, stacked backer is a really, really important position and critical to how the whole defense is played. So since there's a lot of disciples from Vic Fangio in the league, to look at someone like Styles, and, I think we would both agree that he's a little freakish with his physical traits, if you draft him and you run that style of defense, he becomes a really critical piece in what you do. And from everything I gather, he's supposed to be an unbelievable kid. I don't know if you know him at all. I mean, I just sit in my office here at NFL Films. I'm kind of a recluse. I sit in my office at NFL Films, so I don't get to meet these guys and talk to them. But I understand he's a tremendous kid.
I've never met him, but I talked to Matt Patricia about him, and he said the exact same thing. Like, called him one of the favorite players he's ever been around at any level of football.
Yeah, so there you go. It depends on your scheme. If you're going to run that kind of scheme, that player is really, really critical to what you do.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Now, I'm curious in terms of pass rusher, right? We have a lot of Jets fans who are watching. Do you have a favorite pass rusher in this draft?
Well, it's interesting. Part of doing what you do is obviously I watch the tape and I see what I see, but part of this is what are we doing this for? It's all projection and transition, correct? That's what we're trying to do. That's what teams are trying to do. Sometimes you get it wrong. You see something and you think, oh, this guy can do this, and maybe it doesn't work. But I'm an Arvell Reese guy. I think down the road, he's 20 years old, as you probably know, Adam. And I think that just based on reps that I've seen, because obviously I watched a ton of Ohio State defense. Based on reps that I've seen, I think he can become a really dominant edge pass rusher. Now, it's always easy to make comparisons, and I'm not going to sit here and say he's Micah Parsons next week, but I think that he has that kind of it's in his body. Let's put it that way. To be that guy. Could he be that guy tomorrow? Probably not. Probably needs some work. But I think just with the explosiveness, I mean, he's a little bit freakish. So, to me, is he the best pass rusher as we sit here and I speak to you today? Probably not. But I think down the road with that body type, with that physicality, I mean, he had some reps this year with that one-arm stab where he just pushed offensive tackles right back into the pocket. I'm sure you've seen some of those. So I really like him. Now, if you're asking me who the best pass rusher is right now as we sit here today, I'd probably say the best pass rusher is David Bailey. If you ask me who's the best all-around defensive end, I'd probably say Reuben Bain. So it all depends on what you're looking for within the context of your defense.
3 different answers. I love that. 2 very different questions. It's a terrific, terrific response.
Yeah, there's,
Greg.
There's so many variables here, as you know. It's not, these are, as I said a moment ago, they're not mathematical equations.
100%. Now, this is my favorite question. Save the best for last. The wide receivers. Okay. Because I do this with you every year, and you bat 1,000 on this. I mean, you were the guy years ago who said George Pickens, talent-wise, this guy's going to be a star. And you were right. And again, you're not talking about character or anything else. Just what you see on the film. Right. So I want to know who is the best receiver in this class, and maybe a guy who's not getting enough attention, who has the Greg Cosell stamp of approval at the wide receiver position.
Again, now it comes down to how guys are deployed, but there's 2 guys whose tape that I find really interesting. One is talked about, and that's Casey Concepcion. I looked at his tape, and I just see him as really fitting the NFL game today. He's a 3-level dimension. He's terrific run after catch. You can use him on jet sweeps, orbit reverses. To me, he fits the NFL game. And, the game has changed in the passing game, as you know, Adam. This delineation between he's an X receiver, he's this, he's that. I don't want to say it's totally fallen by the boards, but it's not the same as it was. Because now teams, there's so much pre-snap movement. There's so many reduced splits. It's not where, hey, you put a guy outside the numbers and that's where he is all the time. So Casey Concepcion is a receiver I really like. And I'm going to give you a small school guy. And again, smaller school guys, you never know because of their competition. But I think the traits, and again, not knowing the player, but traits to me are really high level, and that's Ted Hurst from Georgia State. To me, watching his tape, and I understand the level of competition, so if it doesn't work right away, I get it, and I'm sure I'll be ripped on social media. That's the world in which we live. But Ted Hurst is 6'3 plus. He can run. He caught a ton of balls between the numbers. And I know it's not the NFL, but I think in this league, you've got to catch balls between the numbers if you're a wide receiver. So he was just somebody that I knew nothing about other than a name on a sheet of paper on a list. And I watched him, and I came away thinking, if this guy was in a Power 4 conference, to me, he'd be a first-round pick. But he's not in a Power 4 conference, so he won't be a first-round pick.
Greg, you're the best. I mean, we could do this all day. Appreciate it. Know the audience loves it as well. Continued success, my friend, and appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, Adam. Love being with you as always.
Greg Cosell, he's the best. Now to the NBA, where everyone's talking about the MVP. Even the players and the coaches. Here's J.J. Redick making his case for Luka.
After you said Luka should be more prominently featured in the MVP conversation, he had the type of performance that had the entire Miami crowd chanting MVP. Why do you think he's not more prominently featured in that conversation?
Because he complains to the refs. I don't know.
There's been chattering on behalf of other players. Would you like to chatter on behalf of yourself?
Nah, I'm good. Thanks for asking, though. But yeah, I'm good. I let my game do the talking.
Man, I just love that from J.J. Redick. I love that from SGA. And SGA, of course, had a terrific performance last night and another big win for OKC. And they're the best team in the NBA. And you throw Victor Wembanyama into this conversation as well. But I think Redick made such a terrific point when you look at it in terms of the perception versus the reality when it comes to Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic complains to the refs. He will drive people absolutely nuts. He's also unstoppable. And I think, and Redick made this point talking to the press, if the Lakers finish like how they've been playing, and they have Cleveland tonight, and, obviously we have, a stretch of games down the rest of the campaign. If the Lakers keep playing like this and Luka keeps pouring on the points, I think that Luka Doncic is worthy of the MVP. And I love that Wembanyama made the case for himself, and the Spurs have had a terrific season. And obviously, SGA is my guy, and I always defend him all the time. And, I picked him for MVP last year before the season, and I won. Picked the Thunder to win a championship, and I hit that as well. I just think that when it's all said and done, you need to make sure you take bias out of this when it comes to, and Redick's right, Luka Doncic. And I think right now, and again, I don't have a vote. I do for the NFL when it comes to the awards and the MVP. But if the season ended today, and it doesn't, and it's very important to ultimately, when it's all said and done, recognize and acknowledge here that you have to wait for the campaign to finish. If you take some of your preconceived notion and hate out, and you recognize that the Lakers became great when Luka became the focal point and started scoring in bunches, and LeBron James became a role player. Look, I know the odds right now are long. There's no question about that. But I would rank it Doncic 1. My personal MVP ballot would be Luka 1, SGA 2, Wembanyama 3. And listen, I hate the fact that I would have Jokic, who's still the best player in the NBA, number 4, Jaylen Brown, number 5. But a little love for our guy, Luka Doncic. Let's finish strong. Did you ever find your pin? That moment with Tracy was great. Did you find the pin?
Yeah, because I collect them. I collect them, and I set up a little shrine in the locker room before every game, and I collect any mementos from the year. This is who I am. I mean, I'm a quirky guy. I'm pretty unpredictable. My brain works in a. I know Larry David. In a weird Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm meets Billy Bob Thornton type of way.
Dan Hurley is an absolute gem, and loved having him on my SiriusXM radio show yesterday for 25 minutes of gold. And listen, he is the best coach in all of college basketball, and, you know, his personality is amazing. And I said this to him during the interview. He's a freak. I mean, you know, Tracy Wolfson is going to interview him after that game, but he just wants to know, where's his pin? I love him. And anyone who's saying, you know, he should have been teed up, or what is he doing with the refs? I mean, please, that's amateur hour. I mean, Terry McCauley is all of a sudden inserting himself into chat. Hey, Terry, why don't you get something right on television for a change when it comes to being a rules analyst? I mean, you're not even in the same league as Gene Steratore, but I digress, or maybe I don't. You know, Dan Hurley is not everyone's cup of tea. You have to acknowledge he is absolutely amazing at what he does, best coach in basketball. And listen, I think that he obviously has just done the best job he's ever done in his career, getting UConn, this version of UConn, to this stage. He's won 2 natties, 17-1 in the last 4 years in the NCAA tournament. He's incredible. But this, to me, is the best pure coaching job. And look, UConn has a shot to cut down the nets. Illinois has a shot to cut down the nets. Illinois is like the forgotten team when you look at it here in the NCAA tournament in the Final Four, and I can't wait for it. I refuse to make a comparison. While I acknowledge Michigan and Arizona are clearly the 2 best teams playing in the Final Four, and Michigan's been, without question, on the Schein Time eyeball test. You look at it, and I think that Michigan has been the best team in the NCAA tournament. I think that there's no comparison between the NFC title game last year, where you knew winner of that game, Seahawks-Rams, would beat either the Broncos or the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I don't view Michigan-Arizona that way. I think that team will be favored, and deservedly so and rightly so, but I think the Illinois-UConn winner will absolutely have a shot to ultimately win a championship. If you're a Red Sox fan, the Sox stinks. I mean, my goodness. Look, here's the deal when it comes to the Boston Red Sox, okay? And I'm not pushing any panic button. I think Alex Cora is unbelievable, and Roman Anthony's special, and he'll start the hit. But this team doesn't have anything in terms of a margin for error, and that's problematic because the offense in the offseason was deplorable. You think it was rough being a Yankees fan in the offseason with the offense. I mean, Boston got a million times worse. They got better in the rotation, but Suarez was awful in his Red Sox debut last night. That was kind of a mess on every single level. So not good if you're a fan of the Boston Red Sox, but I know in Boston you love to get fired up as you watch the Red Sox play. I would not push the panic button anytime soon. What are we betting tonight? We're going to bet the Lakers lay the 2.5 at -110. What are we watching tonight? I'm excited that the Knicks and Rockets are going to play, and I think, you know, the Knicks clinch a spot in the playoffs. And look, sake of conversation, this is not the goal, this is not the standard. You know, when it comes to Jim Dolan's Knicks forever, they were a complete and utter clown show, so I will always at least appreciate making the playoffs. You'll want to see the Knicks ultimately get to the NBA Finals after firing my guy Tom Thibodeau, so I'm always looking for reasons to believe. I didn't like what I saw in OKC. Let's see him take care of business against the Houston Rockets. What a terrific show. If you missed any of it, just go to YouTube. Watch it again. That's what I'm going to do. And then join us tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, here on Schein Time, New York Post Sports, California Post Sports.